Hey guys, it's Thomas again, going over my third video on thoughts as I read through Dr. Peterson's new book, We Who Wrestle With God. So I'm in the third chapter. He's talking about Cain and Abel, and he takes a little detour and starts talking about David. And if you aren't familiar with the Bible, David is like David and Goliath, the shepherd boy who killed Goliath with a slingshot. And he talks about what it means to be a shepherd. And one of the reasons he talks about why it's important to understand what it means to be a shepherd is because one of the brothers in Cain and Abel was a shepherd. And he goes into some of the details, reminding us that to be a shepherd during those times wasn't simply walking around with sheep and making sure they got water and grass. You're out in the wilderness, you're braving nature, you're braving lions, you're braving wolves, probably thieves, all things like that. And it takes a lot of courage and takes a lot of strength, and um, you have to be able to fight for those sheep. And I wanted to read something that helps to describe this dynamic that's from the book. Thus, the shepherd is an image of the mightiest hero, albeit in ordinary guise, armed with little but courage and faith, successfully confronting the worst in nature and man while devoting his service to the least and most vulnerable. So I like this idea that the shepherd is a type of hero and an ordinary hero, somebody that you and I can all relate to. But what really piqued my interest was devoting his service to the least and most vulnerable. And that's a common theme throughout the Bible. And I think that's important because it reminds me of something that I keep finding as I'm reading a lot of books about leadership. Whenever I'm reading books about leadership, I tend to recognize the themes, and I'm starting to recognize that almost every idea in leadership is embodied in the spirit of the Bible in one form or the other. And when it comes to this passage and this description of being a shepherd and why it's so important, and um, detailing out the fact that you're serving the least, it reminds me of the idea of servant leadership. I work in healthcare leadership and have for a long time, relatively. And servant leadership is one of those things that's, and I don't want to take away from its value, but it is kind of faddish. And all of that I already see detailed out here in a lot of the biblical stories. And it's not just that one. All through Moses, a lot of the lessons that I'm reading, when I'm getting down into the details of the story of Moses leading his people out of tyranny into the desert, into the unknown, bringing them together, giving them a common vision, and pointing them in the right way, a lot of the leadership literature is all of that same stuff. And even further, you might be familiar with this book. It was pretty popular. It's called The Comfort Crisis. The idea is that you should get out of your comfort zone because that's the only way you can learn. You face adversity, and because you're facing adversity, you have to overcome it and you gain the tools to do so. And that makes you a better person. There's a lot of psychological literature that says specifically that when you have a fear, you have to face it. You have to be kind of on the edge of chaos and order, as Dr. Peterson would say it, in order to learn. And he starts going through the story of Abraham, and it's the same thing. Abraham is living a very comfortable life, and the Spirit of God in the story of Abraham is get out of your comfort zone. You have too much comfort. You're in your 70s or 80s, you don't have any kids, you're living like a king. Get out, do something, be adventurous. And when he does that, he has to face a lot of hardship. There's war, there's deceit, there's all kind of bad things that happen, but he also has the adventure of his life. He actually ends up having children. His children end up going on to be the chosen people. I mean, all kind of great things happen. So it's the same exact thing. So I just keep seeing the same theme where we have all these leadership ideas when in healthcare leadership and leadership overall. And as I'm reading these old biblical stories, I'm understanding that those themes resonate because they're a part of the embedded culture that we already have through these old stories. Another thing that I almost forgot about in relation to the idea of servant leadership, it's also important to remember that the word minister actually means servant. So that specifically is a type of servant leadership that ties all that together. So I'm going to keep reading the book. I'm having a good time reading it, learning a lot, and I'm going to keep relaying some of those ideas with you guys. And I'll see you in the comments. And if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe to the channel. It's very helpful as it grows. And I hope you have a great night. Bye.